Is it actually recording? Is it actually recording? Oh, hello there, friend. Welcome back to Max Answers Writing Advice Questions. One of these days, I'm gonna say something like, "Welcome back to Max Plays Final Fantasy IX," and we'll just keep going. I have done it in the past. I think there was one episode of Shadowrun where I was like, "Welcome back to Max Plays Final Fantasy IX," and I just kept going, and I didn't notice it until post editing. Anyhow, hilarity out of the way. Today we'll be talking about my particular tips for writing fight scenes and combat. This is one of the subjects that I get questions for all the time, so I thought, you know what, let's review a couple of the things I've said in the past and add a little bit extra here and there with a fun activity for all of you watching at home. But before I go anywhere, allow me to give you the formal disclaimer. As always, I remind you that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of a silly person who looks a little bit, or rather, precisely like this. So with silliness out of the way, let's dive right in. What are some of my particular tips for writing fight scenes and combat? Well, actually, I nearly forgot about this. Before we go anywhere, let's do a little bit of a fun activity, you and I. And by you and I mean you and not me. Just for hilarity's sake, just for fun, I want you to indulge me for a moment, okay? I want you, yes you dear reader, wherever you are, hopefully if you're in the comfort of your own house, or home, or room, and nobody's gonna judge you, please, for the time being, I would like you to, you don't have to stand up, just in the position that you are right now, probably sitting up, I presume. If you are in bed watching these, I'm jelly, because that's probably super comfortable, but I want you, in your sitting up position, to hold up a fighting stance. Lift your arms, you know, if you would like to, actually, it looked better in the preview camera. Hold your arms up as though you're fighting, okay? Just hold them like this. You don't have to throw punches, just hold them up. Round one, fight. Hold them up, okay? Hold them up there for a little while. I'll come back to you in a moment, okay? It's a fun activity, tag along. Actually hold your arms up. You'll realize the hilarity of this in a little while. Now, combat and fighting is one of those problematic things in writing. Why? Because I think it's a little harder to translate into actual writing, and there's a couple of format things that become problematic. And really quickly, diving into here, my first piece of advice, and this is really like the core of the advice, the big nugget here. My personal best advice for writing combat and fight scenes is to take it methodically and be very, very, very clear. Almost to a fault, if you may, because the thing is this, the problem with fight scenes generally, and by fight scenes that are written badly, is that they become confusing. They become a cluster F word, Max said, trying to ignore the fact that they have dropped the F word several times during the series of this channel, particularly in video game videos. But I just realized recently that a bunch of you are like super underage, and I should probably watch my effing language. So yes, cluster F word. In these particular scenes that are not so well written, the problem here arises because the reader becomes confused. There are so many things happening so quickly that the reader loses track of what's going on. What's the answer to that? Really simple. Be straightforward, clear, and concise. One of the things that prevents people, and by the way, I hope you're still holding your arms up. Keep holding your arms up. You will realize why I told you in a little while. One of the things that bothers people is that regular narration can give you those really nice meaty chunks of text. And I know that I'm going to talk about the thing that nobody talks about, which is the writing of the writing. People don't like to have long sentences stuck out. And by people I mean writers. And I stand here today as a proud supporter of single sentence lines or simple sentence paragraphs. Writing is as much a visual thing as it is an auditory thing and a visual thing. Words and sentences have a cadence to them. And I've posted that really old quote forever, but like, if you were to have the same number of words or syllables per sentence in the same paragraph, it would become monotonous and boring. You gotta change things up a little bit. And yes, big meaty paragraphs look cool, but sometimes smaller paragraphs are just as fine. Or just having a single paragraph, a single sentence paragraph is entirely fine, especially when you want to give something punch. So why did I tell you that? Why did I tell you that it's okay to have smaller paragraphs or really short paragraphs? Please don't mind my dog barking in the background. It's because writing fighting scenes and combat boils down to really, really short scenes. That is one of those things that it's kind of almost counterintuitive because we're told to go into detail for things. And for fighting, it resolves itself very quickly. Like, there's not a lot you can say or do for punching and kicking and blocking and parrying and counter-parrying. Counter-parrying, is that even a thing? Let's pretend it is, okay? Let's not question that fact. Like, I feel there's this connection between fights, the way to relay a fight, and our perception through movies and video games and just, you know, visual fiction that makes these fights seem as like they go on for hours and hours and hours, and that's not really the way things are, or that's not really the way things have to be. Fight scenes are generally done very, very quickly, and it's time for me to actually bring us to another point that I want to talk about. And yes, you can now put your arms down. For how long were you were holding your arms up for several minutes, and I think that by now, you can probably realize, unless you're buff as heck, in which case, good for you. You may have realized that just the mere act of holding your arms up hurt. Your muscles were stressed out, and I hope that you actually did the exercise. It would have been really fun. It's interesting once you realize this, because I have friends who had never taken boxing before, and they took a boxing class, and then they realized, wow, just holding your arms up for an hour hurts. And it's like, yes, it actually hurts. Just holding your arms up actually hurts a lot. And by the way, in case you're ever wondering, that pain that you feel as you're holding your arms up for a really long time is your body releasing acid into your muscles to make you go, stop that hurts, you're tearing us up, stop that. You're tearing me apart, Lisa. And it just got really hot in the room all of a sudden. But yes, the reason why I ask you to hold up your arms and to literally hold them up for 6 to 7 minutes is because there's this misgiven perception about how long a fight actually lasts. There was this piece of feedback that I gave to somebody a long time ago, and it was this funny thing because everyone in the feedback group noticed that. They had this line where, like, these two characters were fighting, you know, these two humans were fighting, and then the narration said something like, they went on fighting for 10 more minutes, and everyone in the feedback group was like, 10 more minutes? And I'm like, how long do you think a fight lasts? And, you know, and I don't know how buff you are, how physically fit you are, but, you know, if just holding your arms up, not punching, not dodging, not worrying about getting killed or being punched in the face, if just holding your arms up for several minutes tires you, imagine actual fighting. Actual fighting is really just bursts. Because here's the thing, even if people were to fight for 10 minutes straight, it doesn't keep on going, and I think it wouldn't actually get to 10 minutes because either it comes to the point where one person starts to slow down, it starts making mistakes, and the other punishes them really badly and basically ends the fight right there. Fights end really freaking quickly. And welcome back to another issue of Max Rants about video games and movies and perception. And this is mostly aimed at RPGs, which give you this perception, role-playing games, whether pen and paper or virtual or digital, they give you this perception that weapons have damage. And fists in role-playing games, pen and paper role-playing games particularly, have this really bad fame where, like, oh, your fists do 1d6 damage, which means you roll a 6-sided dice, and the number you get is the damage you did. And ironically, you know, by connection, daggers do 1d4, axes do 1d8, and spears do 1d12. I don't remember D&D, but they have to quantify damage from different sources. And I'm gonna tell you a little secret: punches can kill you. Punches can very easily disable you. You don't need a dagger, you don't need a gun, you don't need a lot of things. It doesn't take a lot to end a fight. A single punch in the right places, a little bit of pressure, right exactly in very particular nudges can just end the fight right there. Now, I know that I've rambled enough, given you plenty of ranting for you to digest and think about in your off time, but for the time being, allow me to continue. What is the point that I wanted to get through with making you hold your arms up and to show you the real physical stress of being in a combat situation, and you just held up your arms. You didn't have to worry about moving, feet work, dodging, and also the psychological element of worrying about getting punched in the face or probably right in your solar plexus and many other places that cause direct, immediate damage and almost possibly the disabling of your entire fighting system. Super mega fighting robot Mega Man? Anyhow, there's this perception that writing has to go on for very long. That writing needs to be super detailed, super long, big chunks of paragraphs. And one of my pieces of advice is that fight scenes, at least in my personal opinion, are best done when brief. Brief and clear. Because here's the deal, okay? Fight scenes are cool. Fight scenes are fun. But at least for me, the best part of the fight scenes are the consequences of the fight scene, what comes after the combat, what comes after this. I was giving feedback to one of my, writerly friends, and they had this really nice fight scene between two military people, you know who you are, and they had this really good fight scene, and it was literally probably one paragraph, about 5 sentences, probably 6, and a couple of them were short, and that enough there was probably 15 seconds. Probably 15 seconds of real fighting. Blocking a couple of times, dodging a kick, getting punched right in the chest, and the fight was over. And I was so satisfied. I was so satisfied because we came in, we were shown what was important, it was clear, to the point, really well played, Pat. And then we saw immediately the consequences. What happens from this? This character's got the upper hand, they get to make choices now. Which brings me to my other point. What is fun about drama? What is fun about loss? What is fun about things being at risk? Consequences of things being at risk. One of my favorite fictional characters has got to be Harry. Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden from the Dresden Files. He is a freelance wizard who works for the Chicago police department. And one of the fun things that I love about him and his book series by Jim Butcher, good series, check it out. What I love the most about that book series, and what I think is one of those really effective elements of being a wizard, put against a bunch of endless threats, is that he always gets beat the hell up. One of my favorite things about Dresden is that every book he gets beat up to all freaking hell, and there's always consequences for every time he gets involved in a magical combat of sorts, or a physical test of prowess against monsters and magical creatures. There's always consequences. Like, there's always a consequence to the things that happen. And I'm not talking about, like, whoever wins this challenge, becomes the king of the Iron Fist tournament, but I'm talking about not exactly huge, enormous things, immediate things. This character is now injured, is now hurt. What is gonna happen next? My thing is this, okay? And I've talked about this, a little bit now, and if you follow my videos, you know exactly what I mean by this. Payoff. Payoff is so meaningful, especially when you have characters that you've been involved with forever. If your entire book is leading up to this fight scene, I'm going to tell you this right now. The actual fight scene doesn't actually matter. I don't think so. And I know that sounds like heresy, but here's the deal. You don't need 10 pages of fight scene. Give me 1,000 words of fight scene, 3 pages of fight scene, at most, with dialogue and narration and description, and you're fine. Because you know why? I don't care about the fight scene. I care about what happens from the fight scene, the consequences of the fight scene, the immediate repercussions of what I just witnessed. Why? Because I want this fight scene to matter. I want the consequences to be important, and I want to have that emotional payoff because I've been paying attention, I've been reading, I've been looking forward to this story, and I want to see what happens next. Oh man. I love stories, can you tell? I love stories, I love emotional payoff, and I think consequences are one of those things that people forget about. Allow me to take a step back and summarize my feelings about combat and my particular points of advice in this particular issue. I think, first and foremost, that one of my very best piece of advice, I was about to break out into the opening theme of Pokemon, but anyhow, I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. Anyhow, my piece of advice is this. First and foremost, the writing, the thing that everybody wonders about. Really, people think that advice about this deals with writing, and I think it's mostly about values and concepts rather than actual technique. In this case, be clear and concise. I know that people talk about a lot of narration and description. With fighting, though, I think being straight to the point, focusing on what's going on, especially if it's from the point of view of a character, it's much more effective. I think it breaks the flow of narration to have the character in the middle of the fight start reflecting on their life. I think that breaks the flow. You're in the middle of the fight. This fight is literally gonna last 10, 15 seconds. Focus on the moment. You don't have to have a, 3 pages, a huge, enormous series of blocky paragraphs that look impressive. You don't have to. Small sentences are fine. Small, quick, straightforward, to the punch. Be concise. It's a fight scene. It's almost like I don't want to say like a manual, but it's a series of events happening in quick succession. You have to be clear and concise. Simple as that. Now, as for my other piece of advice, remember, fight scenes don't last a long time. Fight scenes are very straight and forward and to the point. Unless you have supernatural characters, in which case it's of course understandable. I think regular people fighting and regular people doing regular, I guess, fighty things, it doesn't last very long. You don't have to go on for lots and lots and lots of pages. Fights are over really quickly. There's this misconception about how long a fight should last and how much damage does a fist to the face do. Spoilers, it's a lot of pain damage. It gives you the status effect pain, and pain is enough to end the fight. It really is. You know, fights don't need to end with death, but that's another entire point for later. What is my final point? The most meaningful thing, I think, fight scenes are not really about the fight scene. A fight scene, much like many other elements of the story, is merely just a vehicle to move the story forward. What is the most important thing about a fight scene? Consequences. Consequences. Meaningful, immediate consequences. A person has been defeated, somebody else has won, somebody stands victorious, what happens next? Because I think there are a few things. There are only a few things that are more disappointing as the big fight that everybody has been looking forward to having no effect whatsoever. I think that's a little disappointing. Why? Because it doesn't actually give the reader the emotional payoff for their emotional attachment. Now, that's an entire different book for an entire different day. The idea of emotional attachment and resonating that emotional attachment with your reader. But for the time being, remember, consequence. Immediate, meaningful consequence. That, your fight scene doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be long and extraneous and super descriptive. It comes in, it has an effect, it has a ripple through the story, and I think that's enough to linger on in the reader's heart. But hey, that's just how I feel about this particular issue. It suddenly got really hot in this room, and I don't know why. But anyhow, silly this out of the way, I want to remind you, as always, that this is merely just my opinion on how I feel about things. If you have your own point of view and would like to let everybody know, please feel free to go down into the comments below. And that includes your very own advice for fight scenes. Did I miss anything? Is there something that you would like me to know? Or your own piece of advice that you think has worked over the years for you and you would like to share with everybody? Hey, you know what? I'm also looking for new advice, so please feel free to share it down in the comments below. If you have questions, please feel free to send them, leave them in the comments below, or tweet at me at Mr. Kirin. But anyhow, for the time being, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I will be seeing you on the next one. Mwah!